Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Finlo Costain. Today's headlines: polarised debate must end to avoid backlash on agricultural reforms in Scotland. Scientists claim that a gulf exists between facts and claims regarding cell-based meat. And 60% of farmers would consider planting agroforestry if they could see tangible benefits. The Soil Association in Scotland is clear that diets need to change. Less and better meat, more and better vegetables, fruit and pulses. They support extensive organic and agroecological forms of production and are keen for members of the Scottish Parliament to recognise the benefits of ruminant agriculture from both ecological and nutritional perspectives. However, the Committee on Climate Change recently wrote to MSPs, making it clear that to meet net zero targets, Scotland's livestock numbers must come down. I spoke to David Mackay, the head of policy for Soil Association Scotland, and asked him whether or not this is true.
A qualified yes. So the Climate Change Committee, in the letter to the Rural Affairs Committee at Holyrood, was very specific in terms of the numbers. From memory, it was 29% reduction in dairy cattle, 26% reduction in beef and sheep. Now, those are quite big numbers. I think the MSPs in the committee were quite taken aback by that when we have, again, a farming system and food system in Scotland that's based very much on livestock production. Having said that, I do think that if the Scottish Government were to follow what we are suggesting that they do in terms of that shift towards more agroecological production, there would be a reduction in the number of animals farmed by nature of, if you take organic, for example, the stocking densities are going to be lower. So I think that there's a certain degree of reductions in the national herd would come as a result of that. I think that I'm not sure exactly where the Climate Change Committee is getting those specific numbers from. That's something we'd have to interrogate in more detail. But, in broad terms, we would agree that livestock numbers do need to come down. Just perhaps we might disagree on just how much.
Clearly, the Committee on Climate Change is coming purely from a greenhouse gas perspective, where the Soil Association will be coming, at agroecology from a broader sense, looking at nature and biodiversity, economics, a whole range of different things. Do you think that the Scottish Government is able to take that broader view, listen to what the CCC is saying, but then take its own view in terms of a broader perspective?
Yes, I hope so. Where we're at the moment in Scotland in terms of policy development for agriculture, we're slightly behind the other parts of the UK. So we're going to have an agriculture bill introduced to Parliament in September, and the proposals thus far are, to break it down in the most simple terms, for a four-tier framework. Now, Scottish Government has committed to maintaining direct payments, so that will continue. What was the BPS will be rebadged, but 50% of that direct payment will be contingent upon what the individual farmer or landowner does to reduce emissions and to improve biodiversity. So I think in that sense, there is an understanding within Scottish Government of a kind of whole farm approach to this, where we're recognizing that it's not just about carbon, it's not just about methane. Actually, we're thinking about the environmental impact of food production and maintaining quality food production in years to come, but doing so in a way that reduces our environmental and climate footprint. Now, whether that is going to be enough to meet the highly ambitious targets that Scottish Government has, I think is a different matter. We have a net zero target for 2045, which is 5 years earlier than the rest of the UK. We also have an interim emissions reduction target from agriculture that needs to happen by 2031. By 2032, and it's a 31% reduction in emissions. So we're now in 2023. So in the next 7 years, we have to reduce emissions by almost a third. And on recent history, in terms of what's happened up to now, that's going to be extremely difficult.
Indeed. Look, just finally, and I say just finally, I know it's a big question, but the discussion around meat and livestock has become increasingly polarized. I wonder if you have views about how we can start to reverse this so that society can start to make progress in that sort of more joined up approach that we've just been talking about.
Yeah, I think it's essential that we find a way to have this debate, this discussion in a more constructive fashion. I think we've all seen the examples of how polarized this has become, and certainly in Scotland, that Edinburgh City Council recently endorsed a plant-based treaty, which in and of itself didn't actually commit the council to doing very much, but the publicity, the backlash that ensued was enormous. And we had similar high-profile news stories on university campuses where students have tried to remove meat from the menus in canteens. So, I mean, I don't think that the way in which that's portrayed in the media certainly is not helpful. I think where we need to get to, and this is something that we try and do at Soil Association in the conversations we have with industry, with government, and with other NGOs in this space, is to try and find areas where we can agree as a starting point. So if we all accept that Scottish Government has set these targets, we all accept that there is a climate and nature emergency, and that the status quo isn't going to cut it going forward, then that's a starting point where we can start to have that constructive discussion. Okay, well, how do we get there? If we all agree on where the end of the journey has to get to, then let's have the conversation about how we get there, and do that in a respectful manner that takes account of strongly held views on different sides of the argument.
Well, that was David Mackay from the Soil Association. More about this and our other headline news on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back on Wednesday after the bank holiday. Thanks for watching.